Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to Waterhouse Vibes, a platform forum that discuss issues affecting the working people in Jamaica. Today, we have a very special guest that is going to tell us about the conditions facing the working class in Jamaica, general condition. We're also going to look at one case involving a fireman who, for decades now, been fighting to get back his job because of some misunderstanding of the regulation. Well, I say misunderstanding, probably it's more. I hear a voice, I hear a sound in the background.
I turn it off. Sorry.
I am Michael Nita, your host, and alongside Mr. John Orton, a former General Secretary of the NUDT, the National Union of Democratic Teachers in Jamaica. Also, we have Mr. Herb Nelson, a research analyst from out of Washington, D.C., who have been doing a lot of good work in Jamaica. And here, we also have Mike Las Crawford, an organizer, and we're waiting on Maxine and Patrick McCarthy to join us. Senator Lambert Brown,
Hi.
president of the University and Allied Workers Union, is a long-time fighter for working people in Jamaica. And we're going to spend the next hour talking about a particular case. And Mr. Brown will sort of tell us what role can we play, we Jamaican overseas, what role can we play to strengthen the working class in Jamaica? So without further ado, Mr. Lambert Brown.
Yes, Mr. Nita, how are you doing?
I'm good
I
enough.
Good. Thank you for the introduction. But I must say that this year marks 52 years of service to the trade union movement on my part. So I kind
Wonderful.
of I claim veteran status. And yes, I've been in the Senate for 12 years, where I try, as part of the People's National Party, both in government and in opposition, try to advance the causes of the working people. Because that's where my life is. That's what I defend, and I put the workers always over party. But it's true to say that the workers in Jamaica are having some difficult times. The cost of living, and you in America also face the cost of living. But we have cost of living and very low pay. The bulk of our workers are on minimum wage or just above minimum wage. In the last couple of weeks, you have seen workers in the tourism sector, big tourist company, Royalton in Westmoreland, Secrets and Breathless in St. James, Iberia Star in St. James, Excellent in Trelawney, Jewels in St. Anne's and Baye Principe. These are foreign owned hotels, but the workers there are poorly paid. In fact, some of them indicate that they are working like $2 and change for US per hour. So they and the cost of the minimum wage, just above the minimum wage. Minimum wage in Jamaica is $15,000. And transport to take out a big part of that cost for the workers. They don't live beside the hotel. They have to travel some distance to go to work. And then when they go to work, they get poor quality food, if any food at all. And so their condition of work is so serious that even without trade unions, they have rebelled. And it's showing their frustration and disgruntlement. And so that has been in the news recently. The A lot of our workers are in what is called the BPO, business processing outsource centers, where they essentially call centers, and there the wages is not much better. So it's difficult for workers to survive on what is Jamaica $15 per week. $15,000 per week. $15,000 per week. And so you're talking about what? That's 10 US, a little less than 10 US per week is what the workers are facing in the majority. So things are really tough on them. And at a time when the government says unemployment is low, but the reality is that the cost of living is very, very high. And so the workers in the tourism sector are now agitating for trade unions, and my union, among other unions, are out there trying to organize those workers and to give them strength so they may fight. The employers have responded by giving, in one case, they offer a 10% increase in salary. Workers rejected it. But the battle continues, and of course, in agriculture, where large part of labor force is employed, again, you're talking about low wage workers, the sugar workers, the banana workers, and much of those have been affected by the hurricane. And then in the shops and offices, again, that's basically minimum wage pay. So our workers are in a bad way in the country.
What can you tell us about?
Sorry, Lami. Hold on.
Hold up, John, hold on.
No, it's not a question. I'm just asking if the public can hear because I don't see no sign of anybody in the public.
Yeah, man, we have people here.
Oh,
Not in the chat, but I'm monitoring that. We have people.
okay.
Lami, what I wanted to tell us about is this new feature of the working class where people are working on contract, right? So what can you say about that? That's a new thing we observe in Jamaica.
It's
Contract work.
but yeah, by new you have to understand that before workers tend to be treated as employed full time, indefinitely, permanent employment. Now, since 1975, when the Labor Relation Industrial Dispute Act came into being, allowing workers the right to join trade union of their choice and allowing for workers to be reinstated if they were unjustly terminated by their employer. New grounds were broken. In response to that, the employers have sought to go to what is called short term contracts. So people are employed for 3 months at a time, and that 3 months is rolled over, or 6 months, sometime 1 year, but most time it is 3 to 6 months. So by the time you try to organize a union, they could fire you and bring in a new set of workers, and there's no benefit for you because they're saying you only have 3 years contract. So if you come to Jamaica and you drive on a toll road, for example, the government has granted those toll operators a license for 49 years to operate the toll, but they're employing the workers on 6 months and 1 year contract. So you'll have workers there for 15 years and 1 year contract being rolled over. So issues like pension, workers won't be able to see pension benefits. Sometimes leave benefit because you are 6 months, you can't get maternity leave, you can't get it. So, and as I say, if you try to organize the place, because there's a large unemployment pool, they just terminate you and bring in a new set of workers. But there is fight back taking place now against this fixed term contract. I know Mark Golding, Peter Phillips before him has committed the PNP to bringing a law into being, as is in the United Kingdom and in other countries, where you have to show justify objective a reasonable objective why the person should be on a fixed term contract. For example, if a worker goes off on maternity leave now, you need to cover that. So it's okay to bring somebody for 3 months to cover the maternity leave or for some other short term purpose. But you can't have people working, as in one case that came to my attention last week. A worker at the UDC Orcharios. She was employed in 2020, and in 2024 they come to terminate her. And all she's been is on a series of rolling contracts. So there's no permanency, there's no pension for her. And that's the condition that the workers face. So to the extent that you guys are abroad and you can see legislation or other policy measures that have been taken to curtail this, and I know the US is worse than us, we welcome those suggestions and we welcome the lobbying that you may offer to reduce this type of work. In fact, the International Labour Organization, the ILO, have a recommendation against this type of work because it's not unique to Jamaica. And as I say, other countries, Australia, others have passed, the United Kingdom have passed laws, and it's time for Jamaica to bring that law. In fact, I believe that I know that next week, Friday, I'm going to be introducing in the Senate a resolution calling for a Senate committee to be established to review all laws and to make sure that the abuse of this fixed term contract is outlawed.
But
John,
Lambert,
John, you wanted to ask a question. Any
No,
question?
no, no, no.
I want to ask something, Mikey.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Lambert,
Yes.
some time ago there was some ruling on the contract work, especially affecting security guards. That ruling was not in terms of their contract work in the security industry. That those rulings were not,
Fully honored.
and they were not honored in other areas of the Jamaican workforce.
Well, let's put it this way. That's another form of the so-called contract work because when they put you on a 3 months or 6 months or 1 year contract, they are saying that you're not a worker, you're a contractor.
Yeah.
But Justice Batts, in that case, which was carried by the Housing Trust, the National Housing Trust, against some employers, and I can tell you, it is because a number of us union people were on the Housing Trust board that we pushed the Housing Trust for some years ago to take those security guard companies to court. And the court, through Justice Batts, has ruled that these workers who we are calling contractor are not contractors. Contractor is a man who come to your house to do something so you leave. You have no control over him. He brings his own tools. He pays his own thing. Bring him on uniform. You can't. You have to tell him, I want you to paint the house. But you can't tell him how to draw the brush and all of that. You can't tell him when to take his lunch time, when to smoke, if he's a smoker. But with the security guards, the companies control everything about them. When they come to work, where they work, how they work, the uniform they wear. So there's a control and direction of security guards. And Justice Batts says, these people are not contractors. These people are workers. And so the company ought to be paying the housing trust benefit for those workers. For example, if I employ somebody in my office, the worker pays to the NIS, the worker pays to NHT, and I would have to pay as well as the employer. What the security guards company has done is to say, instead of paying the 3% for the
You're
workers.
not hearing properly, the sound is going up and down.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So let me try and repeat.
Yeah, I hear you now.
Under the NHT Act, the employer must pay 3% of the worker's wages. And the employee, the worker must pay 2%. So it's a 5% deduction. What the security guards company did was to treat the workers as contractors. The security guards company therefore didn't pay that 3%, but instead the workers are paying the full amount of the money as self-employed, or certainly 3% as self-employed. And Justice Pat's decision changed that, but the companies asked for some time, and I believe they have worked out with the NHT some transition arrangement. But that too is what I'm saying is part of the system of so-called contract workers. It takes the form of either calling you a contractor when you're not a contractor, or it says you're a worker, but you're only employed for 3 months or 6 months, and I can fire you. I don't have to give you any notice, and you're not entitled to any benefits.
But my thought, Lambert, was that judgment would have changed that trend that was taking place in terms of calling these people contractors. But it doesn't seem like that judgment has been having an effect on that trend towards contract work in the country by what you're saying.
It is not having the full effect, but it is part of the process of making that change. But I will say this to you, Herb. This is a country where the employers still practice the master and servant law approach and of 1848, even though in 1974 a new law came into being. This is a country where a government passes a law about illicit enrichment and then come to the country and say, I don't like that law because that law is used against me. So there's an unhealthy disrespect for the laws and the rulings. And it's only the might of the workers like those in tourism now and those of us in the unions who stand up who will ensure that the changes take place. For example, what the employers used to do for those workers, Mike, is to say to them, if you're an employee, that's a worker, we have to pay your taxes. We have to take the taxes out of your money, out of your pay towards the government. If you're a contractor, we don't have to pay the taxes. It's up to you to pay the taxes. And then the government not going to run you down for the taxes. So the worker feel that they were getting a benefit of not paying taxes by being called a contractor. So they weren't too quick to run away from that term. In fact, in that same case, there's at least 1 or 2 witnesses who went to the court, so-called contractors who are really workers, and sided with the employer in court to say, we love being contractor, even though they're not contractors. So that's part of our problem as well.
Let me welcome Patrick McCarthy to the discussion. Herb, can you set your camera? I'm not seeing your face nor anything, bro. Your camera. Any more question for Lambert Brown?
Yeah.
Well, let him. I thought he was presenting, and we cut him off. Let him finish presenting.
No, I paused.
Yes, go ahead and finish presenting.
No, man, I paused so that you could. It's better if
I
we
got a
did
question.
the way of question answers. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question. I didn't know you were finished.
Yeah, what I was before just something.
I'm not sure what's that. John, go ahead.
What?
Patrick.
What I wanted to
Patrick, you're breaking up.
John, go ahead. Patrick, we're having a problem with Patrick. Go ahead, John.
Yes, one of the things that we have spoken about as a group, and we have life has confirmed to some extent, is the fact that the workers and the union movement is in a downturn, a down spell, so to speak. And I am curious to hear what are some of the things that you would identify in the last 2 years or 1 year among the working class. You just gave an example where some workers think that it's a better thing to be a contract worker, and they actually go and present to the court why they prefer to be on contract, simply because they don't have to pay
Income tax.
Yeah, they don't have to pay income tax, or maybe they don't pay social security tax either. Simply because they are able to claim that they are contract workers when in fact they are workers.
And even if they're contractor, they're supposed to pay it, but they just choose not to pay it and believe that today's money is better spent than our saving in the state that will come back to them in old age. Because oftentimes workers don't believe they're going to get old until time come for retirement.
Yes. So my question, if you heard the question, I don't know if you heard the question I was asking. It's more about the current mood of the workers. Is there a decline in the union movement in terms of workers being unionized? What is going on between the different unions and the UAW, for example, as well as those who are not unionized? What kind of
Right. I get your question, and the
right.
answer to it is this: that globally, the union movement is shrinking, and a big part of that has to do with technology. Let me give you an example. In 1938, a big part of the industrial action in Jamaica was on the wharves. Technology has changed the nature of work on the wharf. Bulk containers, rather than bulk.
Handheld computer.
Exactly. So,
I'm familiar with it because I did my MBA exactly on that issue. Sorry, I was saying that I'm familiar with it. When I did my MBA, one of the functions of the MBA group was to study the wharf, and that was before they brought on handheld computer. So I can immediately identify with it because it was, when our study from the MBA up at university, we went there and we discovered that this was a new thing that the wharf was looking at. Sorry to interrupt. I could identify right away with that issue.
hello?
Hello, Lambert.
Yeah, an incoming call sabotage that. Yeah, I'm saying that technology has made a significant change. If you take, for example, the waterfront I explained, take telephone company. In the past, you go around the country, you see all of these places that the telephone company had. I was making a big profit off. All of that has been shuttered now. they can stay in Australia or Dubai and run the telephone system in Jamaica from a cell phone. So the ability of the workers to shut down the telephone company has changed because technology now allow them to bypass a lot of what was dependent on manual work. So that combined with the new method of contracts have made it harder for the unions outside of the public sector and large private sector like the bauxite companies, agriculture, sugar, banana. It has made it harder for unionization. If you think now in a workplace where people are working from home, remote work, it's natural that the collective strength of the workers have been replaced and reduced by the technology. However, workers still get fired. So under the current laws, you can go to a union and seek representation against an unjustified dismissal and get back a job or get compensation. The unions have also been working closer together through the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, where the UAW and all the other unions well, most of the other unions are working together. So in the public sector, for example, we have what is called centralized bargaining, so that it's one set of negotiation and not 40 different bargaining units negotiating separately. So the unions are looking to come together, not yet organizationally, because I still believe there's room for a lot of mergers, but the working together is much better than 30, 40 years ago. And so you have some hope. For example, in this tourism thing, there's cooperation amongst the unions. Not as much as I'd like, but some amount of cooperation in tackling the non-unionization status of the workers. So at least some union can get into the industry. You'd have heard the unions call for a giant industrial council, which is seems to be getting some support from the Jamaica Employers Federation. The opposition has called for a giant industrial council. So the role of lobbying by the unions does exist, and it is part of the new. Well, it's not that it's a new course, but it's a part of a course that is now more emphasized.
But Lambert, when we listen to the government and their spokesmen, they are championing the narrative that this is the best time for working people in Jamaica because unemployment has never been this low. And it gives the impression that things are good for working people because there's work. From our perspective, we don't hear them talk about the things you're talking about. When they talk about the low employment, they don't talk about the contracts. They don't talk about the wages. They don't talk about the job security and the kind of jobs. So, I mean, it is giving a different perspective on the employment and the strength of the workforce in Jamaica than you are presenting, Lamy. Are you dealing
Well, I'm not sure you're right, other than to say that their spokesman says these things. But let's take the workers' response. The Royal Town Hotel workers went out. Secrets and Breathless workers went out. Ivory Star went out. You can't have a better salesman than Ed Bartlett telling you how glorious the tourism sector is. Yet the workers in the sector saying, oh no, not go so. And they're showing that with their feet and their hands outside of the property. The other factor that you should bear in mind is that while quantitatively, while in terms of quantity, more people you could be said to be working, because if you're working for an hour during a week, you're considered to be employed. So if you set up an ice cement selling stall somewhere for an hour during the week, you're employed. So technically, unemployment is lowest. So to underemployment. So to underemployment. And what I can say, and it's almost sound paradoxical, one of the strength of these tourism workers now is because a lot of workers have migrated, have gone abroad to work. You go to the Turks and Caicos doing the same job as you're doing in Jamaica, and you're getting 3 times the pay. You go to the Cayman Island and doing the same work you're doing in Jamaica, you get 3 times and more the pay. So people are migrating to other places, Antigua, Barbados, and that means there's a scarcity of labor in the hotel. So when the worker go out and take action in the past, you just fire all of them and bring in a new set. That dynamic of the labor market has changed somewhat because of migration, and the employers is not as strong in terms of their ability to get rid of workers and to replace them. So that's a factor to be taken into account. But the people are not buying into what the government is saying. There are 2 by-elections this week that the people voted against what the government spokesperson were saying. And not only the government spokesperson, but the government spending a lot of money buying bikes, buying out bars, giving chicken, giving all type of things to voters. And the last 2 important by-election. So today they're at their conference, promising the world at the arena. People are not buying into what they're saying in a conference that the Prime Minister himself just says, oh, the conference a week.
As another question, Lambert, as we'll be talking about the Jamaica Fire Brigade,
Yes.
I realize that I don't know how long it has been, but I realize that the contract thing has gone into the fire brigade, the fire service as well. Because I'm noticing that a lot of a number of sections that have been contracted out in the fire service. Is that so?
Well, there's 1 or 2 sections, but I would not say that the fire brigade itself has gone into this contracting. The fire brigade, the officers of the brigade are permanent and indefinitely employed. They're,
Okay.
but what you have is a more politicizing of the fire brigade board. And they run things because the fire brigade has its own board. It's run by permanent secretaries and so forth. And they are politicized the board with former JLP candidates and JLP supporters. And they have been unfair and unkind to workers. 2 managers were fired recently. And in the case that Mr. Nita pointed out, a fireman was unjustly fired in 2010, contrary to the fire brigade regulations passed by Parliament. And he has been fighting to get back his job. He came to me last year, and I have been putting on some pressure to hopefully to get back his job on 16 years of payment that has been denied him because of the injustice. And so in Jamaica, there's a lot of injustice being done to work and not to the ordinary people. And that is why the polls, for example, are now showing that the opposition party is 9 points ahead of the government. and the government is in a panic with an election due 1 year from now.
Mikey,
Hold up, last. I want to bring Patrick into the discussion because he wanted to ask a question earlier. And then after Patrick, we turn to Maxine. Patrick, go ahead with your question. Patrick sleeping. Maxine?
I think
He doesn't hear you.
No, he look
Yeah.
like he's in.
it's frozen.
I think he's frozen.
Oh, okay.
Same thing.
Go ahead, Maxine. Go ahead.
Yes, I've been listening to the review and overview by Dr. Lambert,
Patrick MC Carthy.
and I was remembering a recent article or presentation by the Honorable PJ Patterson on the anniversary of the labor movement, and seeing how critical it is to the formation and the development of the political parties,
Patrick,
the state of labor. So I was curious, as it was being discussed, about the technological changes affecting the labor markets, not just Jamaica, but elsewhere, as to how this change has been addressed or is being addressed in terms of the quality of education that is behind all of this. Meaning, if we are projecting these type of changes and dislocation of workers, what is the policies that you can't stop, because this is the new world order. But knowing that our education system is not very good at preparing, the general populace, and the fact, as you also spoke about the tourism industry, it's interesting that other countries in the Caribbean would be offering better wages, even though we have a excellent, seemingly, record of, tourism in Jamaica. So I'm more listening and saying, like, okay, what is the preparation of the governing class, whether in government or in opposition, in planning for this massive change in the workforce? And in this transition, obviously, a lot of people are going to be dislocated and either have to be re-engineered or re-educated to, have work.
Yeah,
So,
you're absolutely correct. And I can share with you my response. Several years ago, I said to the government that the nature of the work that is being done in the public sector, for example, will require, with the introduction of technology, and technology certainly can come, a re-education and a retraining, a reskilling of workers for other areas, be it to be self-employed, so you train them in skills that they can be, or to go into other areas of the economy. Let me give you one quick example. We still in Jamaica sort our meals manually. The technology has long passed where that can be done with machines. I remember some years ago going both at D&G and Real Neville and saw workers with magnifying glass inspecting the product. Have machines that do that. Those workers no longer have a job, even if they're still there doing that. And they're not. So how do you prepare those workers for the future? Now sometimes the workers resist it. Because I remember going to the post office and saying to the workers there, technology is going to take away your job. And workers said to me, no, that is 666. That is the mark of the beast. It will not come. So a lot of workers still don't understand the technology is coming. So I developed something called the MAP, my alternative plan to where I'm working now. Because your job is going to disappear. Who Moved My Cheese is a good little book that would point people to the future, a future that is present, not tomorrow, present today and yesterday. That future is already here with us. So some of us in the trade union movement understands this and point people to reskilling, go and learn a new trade, become certified, and therefore make yourself available for a different type of activities. The days of the cane cutter cutting the cane with his cutlass is behind us. It's technology that is cutting the cane in some of these local places, not just in Florida and so forth. So what I'm saying is that the unions also have to educate the workers, so to the state. But a lot of talk takes place in the state, which is usually how our government operates in Jamaica. We talk and we talk and we talk and we talk. And when the cows come home, we're still talking. So it is a big task ahead of us. How to prepare this generation for the present, not the future. Because the future is, as I've said, already here with us. And you see it, right? You see it. I mean, take the bus system. In the past, a couple of years ago, the bus needed a driver and a conductor to collect the fares. Now we're going cashless. You just use a card and you swipe. So there's no need for that conductor. That conductor either better become a driver, a mechanic, or some new skills. And so we are seeing that reality and trying to say to our members, you can't continue in the same old way. But it needs a concerted effort by all in the society to recognize these changes because old habits die hard and people believe that the job my father used to came to a workplace from he was teenager and retired there. And somehow I must believe that I will spend the same amount of time that my father spent in the workplace. That world no longer exists.
So at what time in history these type of changes, because as you know, these changes are happening globally and all over the world, and in fact, a lot of political change is happening because people are literally now confused about, you know, what their governments can or cannot do. But when is another time in history that this happened within the human space where I'm trying to think if industrialization, that triggered.
Industrialization certainly was one of those era. And if you take it long term, from slavery to serfdom to capitalism, this has always been happening. You
Happening.
know, I like to say the more things remain the same, is the more we say they have changed. But the reality is things are changing and changing every single day. There's some friends of mine in Grenada who, when that revolution in Grenada was overthrown and they went to prison, cell phone wasn't out. When they come out of prison, they come and buck up something called cell phones. So when you take shipping, for example, it used to take days and days for a ship to move from here to there. Now the ship come pathway, drop off things in Jamaica, then another ship pick it up and take it down to St. Vincent or Grenada. Technology has changed the world. We never used to hear the word logistics, but logistics is now a big part of our life, goes every day. We now hear things like telemedicine. So the technological change has been rapid and it is affecting the workplace. Once upon a time, telephone company, you'd have a man, two people in a van, or sometimes three people in a van coming to fix your house phone. No, you barely get one man in a van, and they don't have to come to your yard to do the repairs. They can stay oi and fix it. So I'm
Send a
just
signal. Send a signal.
yes, that's all it needed.
So if the capitalists that own the businesses and all this machinery and technology are making huge profits and dislocating labor that cannot change quick enough by either government or educational institutions, etc. Their profits that they're making now, enormous profits, is that now to be focused on in relation to how, whether it's social welfare, etc. Because if they are not, I mean, if technology is supplementing owners of capital and businesses to do without labor, I mean, how is that being treated? Because if I'm a company and I'm making $1 million a year with labor, the technology making me more profitable, is that where we are going to look at now, that these companies that are making up these profits now without the need for, for my services, but I still have to live and eat and whatever, and they're making more profit.
Yeah, but
How
that's where it's going.
C. Carthy, Patrick MC Carthy.
That's where the life is going. That's where the world is going. And not only that, let me add one other thing. Out of that profit, they can bribe politicians. So the politicians are the ones who need to change the laws. And you find the laws are being changed slowly, if at all. So a simple thing like in our hotel industry, to put in place protection for our workers, to put in a higher minimum wage for hotel workers. Our government is going to be slow because come election time, I need to get some money. Not me, no, but some of the politicians think they need to get some money from the company to help their campaign to buy a couple of votes. So it's a terrible cycle that we have in the world. Jamaica is no exception.
Lambert,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying about technology. Okay. But from all that you have said so far, it seemed to me that the working condition for the workers must be more oppressive. So my question is, in spite of the technology and what have you, why aren't we seeing more protest action by the workers?
So I come back again to the issue. I protest and I'm on a 3 months contract. I'm likely to lose my job. So half a loaf or one slice is better than a whole loaf. That's part of the thinking of some people. And so you're not going to find that the form it takes is protest. You might see somebody make some posts, and today everybody is a journalist. So people may be exposing some things and getting outsiders to lobby on their behalf. That's the different form, in other words. In the past, if I protest, as the hotel workers have protested in recent times, I shut down the business. If now when I protest, the business continues, what is the effect of my protest? I suffer. So I'm not expecting the protest in that way. There are going to be new ways of protesting. And that's the reality. So for example, a call center worker who's under oppressive condition, that call center worker is one working in Waterhouse, one up at Land, one down at Olympic Garden, one at Greenwich Farm, and there's no coming together in the office anymore because with a telephone or a computer, which is the same thing, they can do their work. So the social and the collective strength has been weakened, hence the absence of these protests. Protests will take place where there's a strong collective or strong collective bargaining, but it's not going to take place when the people are more divided by technology today than before.
But where does that leave the organizing effort by the union?
We have to do what to make the best we can when we can. So where workers are in a collective, we seek to represent them. Where some injustice is done to them, we lobby or we take their matter to the industrial dispute tribunal and fight in that way for them. But the old methods of struggle are still available, but not as effective as in the past.
That's a very excellent point you've made. I'm seeing what you're saying in a much better way. And your point, if there is a significant underemployment in the country, for example, because let's use the case of workers where you can farm out the labor or they're working from home. There are so many examples that come to mind. It undermines the capability of the workforce and the union, if there is a union, to really bring about change in the context of the current environment. Because what you're saying is like you might in the tourism industry, people go abroad and they get better jobs in many of the Caribbean countries. They don't have to go to a first world country as such. They can go to a country that pay you in US dollars and get a decent pay relative to what's going on in Jamaica. Or the workers are predominantly on contract. It means that those workers are fired en masse if they were to try to organize themselves. And therefore, it becomes more challenging in the current environment, which is not due entirely to the quote-unquote mood of the working people. It's a lot to do with the realities of technology applied to the workforce, applied to industry in all areas. And that's a very powerful point.
We have not heard from Patrick McCart, Herb Nelson.
Yeah. Let me ask this of this good senator. Senator, good afternoon, and good afternoon to all our listeners. I've been putting stuff out in the chat, Senator, talking about AI and robotics, right? Now, I don't know how far away Jamaica is when it comes to, I know there's a lot of champion UTech and the UWI teams that are very good at robotics. So I suspect that robotics is around the corner in Jamaica. But unless the unions can look out on the horizon, we know that the majority of jobs that are going to be taken over by AI and software are white collar jobs. They can be automated quite easily. How is Jamaica planning for the future? Is there a move afoot to plan for paying people to stay home, for instance, putting people on allowance once they've been replaced? What's the long-term vision that is happening there? Because I don't see this getting much better for the workers in Jamaica. And you see robots now cleaning rooms. You see them putting down, you can buy this little robotized this, put it on the floor and you clean your floor, right? What if the hotels decide they're going to such a system and they're going to start looking at automating certain functions within the hotels or within businesses, the technological businesses? What's your long-term vision on all of this stuff?
Lambert's gone.
Lambert, you there? I'm not hearing.
I think he got cut
Higher
off.
level of the knowledge industry, so that they can be the ones fixing the AI, doing the programming.
Breaking up, we didn't hear you from the start.
Sorry?
Senator, yeah, you were cut off for the last 30 seconds. So can you start over and give a response? Thanks.
Yeah, I'm saying that my vision is the need for training of your workforce at the knowledge level to be programmers of these robots, to be makers of these robots, and not just to be spreaders of bed and cleaning the floor. Long time from when I was a child, the coconut brush was replaced by a floor polisher, and the vacuum cleaner came after that. So the technology has been coming all along. You go into a room now, and the lights are deactivated when there's no motion. So how do we train our people to be able to deal with that? How do we train our plumbing staff to deal with the electronic supply of water, where you just move your hand and the water flow, you stop, the water stop, and you no longer turn in the pipe crack? In other words, and to be fair, the government has said they want to look at this AI thing. But some of us in the trade union movement have seen way ahead and recognize that unless you upskill your workforce, you're going to
Get it cut off again.
Right.
Can't hear you, Senator.
I think it's almost time for him to leave. They're probably calling him.
Yeah,
That might be a call, but
that might be the phone call.
Oh, yeah. It would be interesting to understand what the Planning Institute of Jamaica, in their projections, have for these areas, especially budgeting for the re-education or the retooling of the workforce, because it's not gonna happen without incentives and without infrastructure. Like, for example, if you have hard, I'm just curious because the education system in Jamaica is nothing to write home about, in the other workforce.
Maxine, I think it's not so much about the education system. It's because the facilities are there, like Heart, UTech, they have lots of programs in place, right? But the thing is, who is gonna take the responsibility for funding some of these programs to make them bigger and can take in more people? How will the government ensure that corporate Jamaica, who are making these profits out of the new system, take on more in terms of retraining people?
But that's the new, that's what I'm saying. That would be the new role of government, or
No.
enhanced role.
I think
Even though the
you're
brethren
both.
is saying that they are being paid by these trillionaire, billionaire people to keep the status quo in place. But if you have so many, because these companies are a lot of them, they need us to consume their product, right? They need us to go and purchase.
No, hold on,
Unless they're not
Maxine.
depending on us purchasing anything. I don't know.
Maxine, I think both you and Lass getting it wrong. That's not how this thing work, right? I can use myself as an example. I worked on the waterfront, the Kingston waterfront, for 18 years. Right? I was one of the pioneers, right, when it went computerized in the 70s. Okay? One of the things
You're breaking up, Pat.
I've referred this book before. Can you hear me?
You're hearing you now.
Repeat what you were saying. You broke off there and a big part was missing.
You keep freezing, Patrick.
Freezing again. Can I make a suggestion? I would like to intervene in terms of since Patrick is frozen.
No, Patrick is available.
But no.
Yeah,
He's
you
Go
can
ahead,
hear me?
Patrick.
Continue, Patrick.
Yeah, what is happening really right now? Fast forward to today. There's a book. I referred this book already to Michael. I think I anybody heard with Michael before. The Third Industrial Revolution, which is what we are in the midst of right now. Right? It is the technological revolution. That's what it is speaking. And the matter of the educational part that you mentioned, Maxine, it is not the way you deal with the education part is a retooling. It's not retooling now, right? I think that would have to be because they're not looking at reading and coming. Right? They're not looking at old people like me, right? For go back to anything to deal with what's happening. They deal with who is coming out of it. So this is where the whole retooling of education comes in. Something that would have had to have started. You raise a question about planning institute and what their vision may be, should be. And it can't be one that's focused on what's happening now. It has to always be focused on what is to come, which means that you can work retroactively to correct what is happening now. You have to already have the plan in place to deal with what's happening.
Gentlemen, Senator Brown texted me and said that he's having some problem. So he said we have to continue discussion another time. Okay.
Yeah, this for some reason the StreamYard has been, going crazy because I keep getting kicked out, and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, back to the point I was making. What happens is that everything has to be done proactively, not retroactively. And that's where the problem lies. But a good understanding of it is to really check out the book, The Third Industrial Revolution, and even before the book, and there is on YouTube. They go to lectures. See, you can.
You must have talking in some kind of mic. You have a Bose mic there or what?
No, I'm not talking in any mic.
So why we can't hear you constantly?
I don't know. I don't know because
Can I respond to Patrick a little bit?
Yes, go ahead.
I understand what Patrick is saying, that most of the people who will be coming new into the workforce should be trained. And the education system would be preparing some of those new workers. But the reality is, Patrick, regardless of the new people coming into the workforce as it is at any point of change there have to be retraining, reorientation of the entire work system have to take place. And that reorientation is going to cost, right? Whether it is preparing for the new people or retraining and retooling the people that are already in the workforce, it is going to cost something. The point I was trying to make is that government, right, need to ensure that some of that cost is not just borne by government, but is also borne by the people who are making the profit of the change that is taking place. Because as we see, and Maxine alluded to earlier, is that when the change is coming and people are benefiting from using software and less workers, their profits are soaring. They're profiting from that system, right? So they should also bear the cost of creating that change. It shouldn't be a thing that people say it is a problem for the education system or it is a problem for the government. It is also a problem for the people who are employers and the people who are benefiting most from the system. And there needs to be policies and there needs to be legislations to ensure that these people pay their fair share of creating the change, so that you don't have the change coming and people just get kicked out of the workforce because they don't have the skills and there's nothing else to go on to. Maxine raised a point about how you deal with situations of like taking care of those people, whether it is like what kind of benefits the system will have. Because some people who will be kicked out will not be able to be retooled because of age, because of number of other issues. How does the system deal with those people? How does it compensate people? How does it accommodate and assist those people?
But here's the thing. Here's that, right? As I said,
Breaking up again, Patrick, and I hear you.
But I have a question while he sort himself out. I hear this argument about investment and all of that stuff in the workforce. But one thing Lambert Brown did not touch on, and I think is very germane to this discussion, is the productivity level in Jamaica. Very low. Not only that, but the cost. I learned yesterday that for light, the cost of oil in the JPS sector is 25 US dollar per kilowatt hours. That happened to be the second highest in the world. How can Jamaica survive under that weight when you have oil costs at that level and a low productivity? Where the money will come from to train or retool, or where will it come from?
That's a problem we have always faced, Mikey. That's why Jamaica cannot compete in things like manufacturing, in areas like manufacturing and all of those things on the world stage in any significant way. Because outside of we finding a little niche where we can produce something, unique, that it don't take too much electricity, and we are in a situation where we can compete in terms of manufacturing. And that is one of the reasons why our government have to do more in the cultural sector, in the creative areas, in tourism, right? In the entire cultural space. Those are the areas in which we have significant advantage. And with the new, in terms of the new technology, in terms of training and developing software, those are areas probably the government need to direct their attention into, because we'll never be able, when it comes to manufacturing.
Where the money is coming from to do all of that?
Huh?
Where is the money coming from to do all of that?
We're making.
Can I make a point on this point?
Yeah, John.
Yeah, I have I get service from Spectrum, which is talking about technology, and I called them this morning, and the driver is on his way here. He should be here in about a few minutes before 5. So I just wanted to make a point that this problem of the application.
That's in your face, John.
Yeah, this problem of the application of technology to all areas, services, manufacturing, etc., to the economy of countries is far from a unique problem. I thought Lamy did excellent in equating some of the things, and I didn't know Jamaica was so far at the bottom with productivity, but having heard that, and some countries are doing very well, and some countries are in between where Jamaica is, and where, like, I'm reviewing a lot of data on a country like China, where the state literally has a port, a seaport, one of the largest in the world. There's no human being working there. Everything is automated. And it's the extreme of the application of AI to certain areas of their economy, to where we are. Because even though Lamy said that our port was when I did my MBA, I was in the first cohort from the university, and we had a group, each of us divided up into groups, and we studied. My MBA major was the application of technology to economic development, and we went to the port. Before the port used handheld computers. And of course, it was a huge thing about what's going, how it's going to work and all of that. The private sector, government, and the educational institutions have a vested interest in designing programs that help to bring a country from the backward to the forward. I don't know of any specific case, but there are, whether it's the Inter-American Development Bank or any other of these agencies, a school like it used to be CAS, what's the name now?
UTEC.
UTEC. I've always praised UTEC compared to the university that I went to, because UTEC left books faster than the UWI did. They applied reality. And a lot of the agencies that are critical industry leaders in Jamaica, like the JTC and some other agencies, have utilized services of UTEC to design programs. So to me, it cannot happen without significant, not just the funding, but the manpower to create in different sectors of the country that are most important to Jamaica's advantage. And tourism would be one. The other one is, what is it? Lambert mentioned it about, what you call it, when you, logistics. It would be another. And there are different sectors where this is happening, whether it's like in a company like Dennis and Geddes that make beer, etc. There, I can't speak now with any authority on how it would be applied. But this has to be the only way. It cannot be done by any one group. And the purpose of that exercise will be to retool, retrain, re-educate the existing workforce to be more productive and to apply technology in the way that we are seeing glimpses of it in the US. The US is way behind many of the Asian countries. Singapore, Hong Kong, many of these countries are already ahead. And part of the reason why they are ahead is the fact that they have a holistic approach to applying technology, and they also have a basic education system. For example, the emphasis on the so-called STEM, science, mathematics, computerization. These things have to be introduced if you want your workforce to be up there, or introduced in a more broader way and applied to those that are working, whether you're applying it in tourism, etc. It's not an insurmountable task, but it can only be done by government and private sector and the top of your educational systems. When I say the top, at the UTEC level or the UWI level, and maybe there would be some programs that can meet the needs of a workforce that cannot get up to speed.
But John, we have dealt with the manufacturers, business people for a long while, and they haven't shown us, they haven't demonstrated to us an interest into that sort of direction that you're suggesting. The private sector in Jamaica, I think, is one of the most backward group of folks. They unless the government dictate these approach, I don't see the private sector taking it on themselves and running ahead, implementing these changes that you're asking about.
Well, the normal way in a capitalist system for that to happen is to incentivize the private sector. And certainly there is a competitive requirement. In other words, for the business to be competitive, whether in the Caribbean or in the region or in the world, there is a case to be made for a program of that nature. I would not go as far as to say nowhere in Jamaica does it happen, because when you begin to study from the macro level, you may not see it, but when you go into the industries, you can see examples of it. Just like how, for me, I look at countries. I look at what countries are doing to bridge this gap. And clearly in some of these countries, Singapore, for example, it is the state that take the lead. But they are not putting a gun to the private sector. They are able to provide incentives. For example, I went on a course years ago, many years ago. I would say maybe when I was in sales, I used to pay for a course offered by the American Institute for Training and Development. And when I went on one of these courses for productivity, a productivity course, there was a big delegation from Singapore. And it wasn't the Singapore private sector. This was the Singapore government sending these people who were leading a program in that country to transform the labor force, including government workers. So, I'm not saying that I don't have a measure of where Jamaican working people are, but how else are you going to do it? We are not a country that run based on like the Chinese model, where private sector, there's a good, strain a bit, because the complexity of China is very much not appreciated from abroad, but many of the things that are happening at a local level, where incentives are provided to regions for certain. Right now, if you look on YouTube, you will see that they have created robot. They had a big marathon in Beijing, and 4 robots was running in the marathon. And these were robots created at a local level. This is not from the government coming down and putting money into some of these programs. So I only make that example because I think there is a big variation between the Asian economic development and what we are used to in the English-speaking Caribbean, which is really at the bottom end when it comes to productivity. There's no question about that.
John, I just wanted to interject. Watching a documentary 2 nights ago, they now have robots that can carry babies.
Carry what?
Babies.
Who?
Robots.
They have developed a robot that can do that.
Carry, who has developed that robot?
The Japanese.
John,
surprised.
John, that solved the problem.
It leaves a lot of questions, Mike. I know your mind racing over there.
Maxine, you heard that? You heard what
Oh,
Herb is
Lord.
saying? They develop a robot that can carry baby.
Does
Then
it make the egg and the sperm?
Well, Maxine, I am not sure how the ramifications in that
You know,
take.
him don't know the inputs.
yeah,
I know
why?
it can carry it, but I don't know that it can make it.
Well,
Right.
See,
look, all I can say is they're trying to replace our women. Who knows what's gonna happen, right?
but
Well,
regardless of that, one thing is clear. Listening to Lamy is that the condition of workers in Jamaica is very oppressive.
Yes.
Very oppressive.
yeah, I'd like to just make one point too that we
Go
ought
ahead.
to note that the labor force of the Caribbean and the countries, the certain labor force of the countries that are linked to these major economic superpowers, be it America or Europe, their labor force is dependent on extracting from us the best of our minds, right? So if like, you go into the hospitals here or, the scientific labs and so on and so forth, you see a lot of Indian, Chinese, Jamaican, some of the best minds of our countries are actually creating technology and operating and developing their systems. So we have to factor in, I'm listening and I'm part of the quote unquote reparations movement that a lot of these countries, especially in the Caribbean and in, overall, they understood that this industrial age was based, and the progress that was made was based on a specific oppression and extraction of labor. You understand? In order to advance, right? And for us to compete, we cannot compete on the level at which these societies are moving. You understand? I'm saying this to say that our governments and our negotiation would have to be including, well, if Jamaica could have kept their best minds, having been trained in UA and so on and so forth, or even trained on the job, what I was hearing from Mr. Lambert, that are some of our top tourism workers have now left to the point now that they can, the labor relations have shifted because they don't have that pool of labor. You understand? To just say, okay, we're gonna fire these people because there are enough people that's in the pool. We have to factor in not just that we're training, that we have to train and retool. We have to factor in that the people that we're training are also leaving and are not reinvested back into our society. It is a factor. And it is a factor that these places that they're going are selling, are exporting back their goods and services to even
To us.
compete to us. So even if we wanted to make a telephone or innovate some technology, we're still at a
Because you hear the thing, Maxine. That's a wonderful point you make. A very good observation. But here's where it's at. It has to do a lot with government policy and the government, how they're thinking about development. Because look what's happening. We have a government who is boasting about low employment and the lowest employment in the history of the country and all of that stuff. But what are they doing? They are creating a situation where they're going into things like business outsourcing, where they are creating services for the high technology. They're providing services for the high technology moving countries. And we taking up the bottom of the barrel jobs, the little service jobs to answer the telephone and to create the orders and all of those things. And they're not creating skilled enough jobs to keep our brightest people here and pay them well. If we are creating jobs, right, which utilize the people who are properly trained and pay them well, we would not have to be creating policies to take the business outsourcing jobs to answer telephone and make orders and make billing, whatever, right? Because that's what's happening. And then because it's those low paying jobs that we are screaming off from these countries, we don't have the facilities in the country that can keep the brightest people here and pay them well. And that's a problem we face. So those countries send us the bottom of the barrel jobs and they take our brightest minds to build their workforce, their skilled workforce. And until we have a government who try to change that kind of dynamics in the economy, we're gonna always have a brain drain, and we're always gonna have a low productivity in our economy. Because what is business outsourcing doing to the productivity of the country? What is business outsourcing doing to keeping the brightest technological minds and finding them good paying jobs to stay in Jamaica? It's not doing that.
And it is interesting because in all of these countries, the Western Union remittance money is now a major input into the economy, meaning to say that they're actually the leaving of the people to go and work in these markets and remitting, a portion of their monies home, not just for Jamaica, but it's how the system is type of created. That, like you say, if you have a government, you ought to have that in mind, that this is what you are
Faced with.
managing.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, how, or at least inform the people that this is where we live. Like, we're just going to school here to go abroad. And then when you go abroad, then we'll send back more of your money or
So you
some
have to work 2 or 3 jobs in America to survive.
No, but what I'm saying, I'm not talking about that part, the survival
No,
part.
I know.
You're
But I'm
still,
just saying, it's not heaven as they make it out to
it's
be.
not
Heaven,
heaven, but
right?
you are still a mother or a grandmother or someone that you have a family back home that
That's
you're
right.
still connected to. But what I'm saying, this is something that is now ingrained to become a policy, that remittances, I don't know what is the percentage of the remittance.
At
And the thing
least
is that,
at least 30 in Jamaica.
but the remittance doesn't come back in and is reinvested in a way, because remittance is, it's not a policy like, the remittance, it's millions of dollars or whatever, but it's still not helping the
It's
development.
about 30% of GDP. Maybe Mexico have more than we do, but this
Yeah,
is the
but we
point.
ought to be conscious that and educate the people. You understand? And educate, when I say educate, lobby.
Right, but the point that Lass is making, which is related to the point I was trying to make at the previous meeting I was at, not last week, the one before. This is a systemic problem of the relationship between the less developed country and the big imperial power. it's a reality. And Trump come now, and immigration is the issue in boiling over, because the people who are leaving, like, look at Haiti. Haiti is just a good example of severe poverty, severe impoverishment, no government, no police force, and the best brains that Haiti have, which is few and far between. But with us, we can talk about the nurses, we can talk about the teachers, the doctors. There are many technical people who have come to America and helped to build the system here from Jamaica. It's only that we might hear about some of the, the ones that go to Harvard or whatever, but there are many who don't go to Harvard and who are contributing to the development of the United States.
It's
But
interesting
his
too.
point is that it's a systemic problem.
It is, and you only have to watch Hollywood, because I grew up as a teenager, young person, watching the movies that are now everyday reality. You understand? I saw the movies where a technological world is fighting a human world. You understand? It's called science fiction, but
Yeah.
we are this, and so it was already projected, because for it to be a movie and a script, you always already have to be projecting, oh, this is a scenario, and this is how it's going to play out. You know what I mean? And it's interesting to me at this stage in my life to be like looking and say, but wasn't that the Jetsons cartoon? Wasn't that Flintstones?
We are living some of the things we used to watch on TV.
What's on TV as cartoon but it's still people projecting. So we ought to be projecting too, not just looking at projections.
Yeah, but
Isn't
here's the
even
problem.
more
Here's the
beneficial
problem with that,
than
Maxine.
advocacy.
No matter how much the movies project, if our government is not aware, fully aware of where Jamaica is on the
developmental scale.
developmental scale, refreshers, all of these things come into play. That the Planning Institute has got to measure what the unemployment is at this point. I can see why the government wants to count the guys who wash windshield as a job, because they have nowhere else to go. If people are uneducated and cannot perform at any technical level or clerical level, then you have to create jobs for them. And the people of Jamaica might want to know at some point you have to accept paying these guys who clean your windshield. If it really needs cleaning, you may have to pay them something equivalent to 1,000 Jamaican dollars, all right, just to make sure that they can go home and feed their families or they can eat. It's that serious. So Lambert is talking about a lot of things that are current and also on the horizon. And we have to now take a look further as to what's on the horizon in Jamaica, because I can see where the hotels, and they talk about bringing in workers from Spain and other places. That's not going to happen, because people in Jamaica need the jobs. But in retaliation for unions pressing for higher wages and benefits and cutting into their profits, they can now push to bring in robotics to replace workers, to operate in the restaurants. I see where people were arguing in the chat over the whether you can actually submit an order. Yeah, you can submit an order, a video, speak your order, or just like your ATM machine, type in the stuff and pay right there, right? You'd probably free from tipping the robot unless you actually want to tip the cook, and they would have to come up with ways to do that. But all of the and somebody mentioned chopping sugar cane or bananas. That's gonna be simple because you have robots now who can do karate and play
Carry,
soccer,
carry baby.
carry baby. So if you have all of these things are happening, Mike, what the hell do you think is going to take for them to program a robot to go chop sugarcane and bananas and all these other things? It can be done quite easily, and you cannot
That's a, yeah, go
estimate.
ahead.
You have to know as government do better planning for the future, and you have to go 25 years out like we do here in the U.S. I remember when I was in government, they asked for 25-year plan. You know,
On that note, folks, we have
we can't
started.
hear you good, John. You're talking, but
No, he's probably
he's
dealing
on
with
the phone.
somebody at his door. He's not talking to us.
Well, any
Put
final
him on
words,
for all of us then.
folks? I think we have exhausted this topic somewhat, and I'm interested in hearing your final remarks before we close out the session. So, can we start with Herb? Your final remarks.
Yeah, yeah, John
Yeah.
still.
Mute John Mikey.
Can you
Mike,
mute?
you get to mute, John.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
Yes,
Look, folks,
Herb.
it's
Go
been a
ahead.
very interesting discussion. And if we have not stimulated our audience, then our audience has to understand. I said a long time ago when our good friend from Tesla introduced the the oh God,
Electric
the
car.
Tesla.
the AI application. When he introduced that, right? He was the first one to do it, Elon Musk. He introduced that application. I said there and then, oh my God, things are going to radically change. I say it's going to be slow for people to realize the impact of AI applications. But once the rich figure out ways of saving money, your best bet is probably not. I used to say you could repair the robots itself, or you could repair um, elements of the robots. But look, they're going to use another robot to do that. So everything is going to be automated, and we're going to be entering the Doctor Who stage. If you look up Doctor Who online, you're going to see um, the presentation by the British of what our future could possibly look like. But it is here, and we have to encourage government to do right by its people. Now you talk about Bill Gates. What is Bill Gates thinking for the future? He's thinking that we're gonna have to start culling our population, not allow it to go to 8 billion in the world, but we're gonna have to kill off some more people in plain terms, because government cannot survive and private sector cannot survive having to feed and house unemployed people in a massive numbers in the near future. So I want you to think about that.
Okay. Last final word.
I I am not pessimistic about the present AI revolution that's taking place. I think with proper planning, proper training, proper application of the new technologies to the areas where we have advantage, we still can apply it to tourism and it still be profitable and suit our people. We still can apply it because the world economy is becoming more and more of a creator economy where people can stay in their own homes, in their own spaces, and create things, right, of value, right? Can participate in the cultural space, in the scientific space, and it can contribute to the overall development of any country's economy and Jamaica's economy. But it needs planning, it needs training, and it needs direction from government. It can't be a situation where a government only wants to say that it has 4% unemployment and disregard the status of those people who are employed. These people are low skilled, low paid, right? Without benefits. That's not development, and that's not the kind of employment that we're looking for or Jamaica will need to take it forward. Right? We need employment where the people coming out of training in our educational institutions can find decent, well-paying jobs that they can stay in Jamaica and contribute to the development of Jamaica because they're not forced to run somewhere else to take up the bottom of the barrel jobs somewhere else just to survive.
Maxine.
Yes, well, my thought is that as parents, whether single or double, we ought to really look keenly at our children as they are our economic future and develop
That's historical information, Maxine. Don't run like that no more.
No, I'm saying we have to know because they are much further ahead in the technology area. They're, they live their lives on their phones, etc., maybe socially, but it is now an avenue of economy. So I'm just saying that, outside of all that, the serious governmental advocacy, we ought to know, advocacy within our own homes and recognize that our children on these phones and taking over their lives, etc., we ought to be steering them towards the economic goals that are on these same devices that they know more about than even us. So I'm going through it within my own life. So I'm just saying, listening to Dr. Lambert Brown as to the changes.
Senator, not doctor, Senator.
Senator Lambert Brown, the changes in our economy that are coming, and to knowing that our children are enmeshed in that economy, but a lot of them are just doing it socially. They're not doing it entrepreneurially. That we ought, as parents, to be guiding them and advocating for them to merge it into business. There are other things, but
John,
that's my thought. Mhm.
John, final words, final remarks.
Maxine, don't forget a lot of these kids are moving back home at age 40. or even
Okay.
older.
John is frozen, so I'll just go ahead. I want to thank you guys for today's discussion. Very enlightening, and I hope the listeners learn a thing or two. Oh man, I also want to apologize for Senator Lambert short stay. He had something to do, and he promised that he will return to continue the discussion about the working class and especially the case involving that fireman. Okay, so I'm gonna try and get him for next week and see if that is possible. There's a lot we can say about the Jamaican government and what have you, but remember this: we're an island, and I cannot, for the sake of me, I cannot understand why Jamaica has not focused on using wind and other form of fuel to change up the society. We need a wind farm, government not thinking about it. We have sunshine, government not thinking about it. So what it points to is a lack of visionary leaders in Jamaica.
Mike, I wanted to caution you on that because the government owns almost half of JPS.
Yeah, but what I'm
So
saying,
if you go to wind farm, then you go to solar power on a large scale, they'll lose revenue, lots of revenue.
but it would reduce the cost of electricity in the country.
That's not
Because
their intent.
well, that is what I'm saying. That we need visionary leaders to take on these challenges. Because these are challenges we have, and we need to figure a way. We can't continue with the high cost of electricity in Jamaica. We can't. It's going to bankrupt us. So again, I want to thank you and everyone for today's session. Very informative. And to the listeners, remember to like and share Waterhouse Vibes. It is one of the few platforms where you can come and listen to a sensible discussion. A discussion in which we are not cursing or tracing or want to fight. We will sit and listen, let each person make their contribution, and we are respectful of everyone. So share this site, share this platform, Waterhouse Vibes, with your friends, your enemy, and your neighbors. Until next week, Sunday, walk good.
Happy
Yes, sir.
Thanksgiving.
Stop.
Happy
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving
Happy
to all.
Thanksgiving. See.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Bless.
Bless you.
Blessings.